Sometimes creators blow my mind, and Trevor is one of those people. An author, artist, and founder of Up Studios, Trevor is an inspiration for pursuing careers through creativity.
So I'm Trevor Lai. I'm the founder and CEO of Up Studios. We're a animation studio based in China, but we produce content for all around the world. And I myself am a children's book author, illustrator, and now animation director and producer.
How did you get involved in all these different aspects from artist, author, and animator?
Well, I started drawing when I was 4 years old. And I think, like most kids, I just love drawing. And so when I was creating my own stories and comic books, I actually wanted to be a comic book artist originally. So, I loved X-Men, Batman, Spider-Man, all the usual characters. And then something dawned on me when I was 17 years old. I suddenly realized that children's books were kind of like a comic book that you read in all different stages of your life. Because when you're very young, your parents read the book to you. And then when you are old enough to read yourself, you'll proudly pick up the book and read it, 1,000 times. And then when you maybe like graduate high school or go to university, sometimes you'll go buy one of your favorite children's books for nostalgic reasons. And then if you have kids or, your friends have kids, then you'll buy that same book that you loved for their kids. And then if you become a grandparent, you'll buy that for your grandchildren. So it's kind of like this story that really gets read over and over and over again. And I kind of felt like, well, that would be really cool. If I could create a story or characters that could live on for literally generations, that would be really special. And so that's kind of how I did a pivot from comic books into children's books. And then I started, writing and illustrating my own kids' books. And I guess because, I'm, Asian and I was young for an author, to be 17. And so, I started being featured in the media and I got to do my first book tour when I was very young as well. And so, things kind of snowballed. So I went to school at Simon Fraser University. And while I was doing classes there, all of my free time was basically filled up either working or doing book tours. And, I got to cut my teeth at a very young age in the industry. So I got, my first taste of an option to do a TV series based on my character. And I remember getting a check and, saying, wow, this is a lot of money. And then I spent all of it on a lawyer, to do the contract for it. And I was like, oh, wait, that's not that much money, but I feel like I got a law degree, based on that experience. And it was really exciting to also at a young age, I think, go through, the ups and downs where you're doing really well, you're covered on television and all the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. But then at the end of the day, your work needs to speak for itself. And you can't always be promoting your work. And I was still a university student. And so learning those lessons, I think at a very young age, really set me up for success later on. And so, fast forward to when I founded Up Studios, this year we're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary, which is pretty, thank you. So it's pretty amazing. I haven't even had chance to, slow down and really celebrate our 10 years yet, but it's kind of remarkable. All these lessons I learned when I was in high school and university, they are still relevant today. So I think, going back to all the different titles I wear, in my daily life, I think it's probably because I've always just felt like everything I do is related. So whether I'm a creator or a founder, or if when I manage our artists that work on our show, for example, Super Boomy, I can kind of understand where everyone's coming from because I've either been there or I've worked with people who've been there. And, I think that helps a lot. So that sort of empathy and understanding of all the different roles, I think has been super, super helpful.
A really fun collab that you did this year was with the Vancouver Canucks. How did that connection happen?
I've been based in China now for over 10 years, and hockey has gone from a very small sport to, growing over the last few years with the Winter Olympics, that just finished now. People, once they heard about it, it really ramped up, whether they were building ice rinks or, creating teams here. And so I started playing ice hockey in Shanghai. And when I was there, I realized, oh, there's this really burgeoning, vibrant community of hockey lovers here. And maybe we can help grow that between then, that was about 2017, I want to say, to 2022. And then the Canucks happened to be in Shanghai playing a game, their first ever China games. So obviously I would like to say I'm the biggest Canucks fan in China. I bought tickets. I was in row one
Awesome.
for that game. Yeah, it was awesome. And I actually caught a puck. So I got a puck off an Alex Edler shot, which is amazing. And, basically from that first game, I got to meet some of the people around the team. And I basically told them, hey, listen, I've got my show, Super Boomy, which at the time was a brand new show. So in 2017, I had just launched the show, but I was very confident it would be successful. And I said to them, well, if there's anything I can do to help promote the Canucks or promote hockey, let me know. And I'd love to work with you. And that was sort of the very beginning seed. So that's 2017. And between 2017 and 2018, people from the league, also met me and heard about me. And I was lucky enough to have my character Boomy invited to one of their China games, the 2018 China games. So Boomy was there. He was in Shenzhen and Beijing, in the mascot suit, and I was there with him. And we produced some little short cartoons, to go with the whole experience. And it went over really, really well. So then afterwards, I talked to them about what we could do more. And we came up with the idea of creating the first ever CG animated series to teach kids about ice hockey, first in China. But I filmed the series with Boomy. It's called Super Boomy Hockey Hero, to teach kids all around the world. And so they saw the series. I wrote, illustrated, directed the series. We produced it at Up Studios. We created 10 episodes. And it's all about how Boomy learns how to become a hockey player, and then actually learns from Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby. Wow. Yeah, and all these players that I looked up to. And, basically to teach kids here to fall in love with the sport. And then we were super lucky that in 2019 and 2020, we actually got to fly out to the All-Star games. So in San Jose and St. Louis, respectively. And each time we went out there, all these NHL fans who had never met Boomy before literally fell in love with the character as soon as they met him. And then they found out there's a cartoon, and they went online and watched the cartoon. And within China, we have now over 60 million views for Super Boomy Hockey Hero, the Chinese version. So that is by far the most popular ice hockey content here ever produced in China. Now, all of that is to say, in that process, the Canucks, obviously, and I had maintained contact, and we had continued to talk to each other. And we had worked on some small videos and little promotions over the years. And then finally, last summer, one of the things that happened, obviously, in the last couple of years is during the pandemic, there was a huge rise in anti-Asian activities. Mm-hmm. Now, as someone who grew up in Vancouver, this really, struck an emotional chord with me. Because, as much as, we all go through bullying, and we all experience that in our lifetimes, I always felt like Vancouver and British Columbia was a wonderful place. And I felt like this rise in activity was something that was not what was in our soul and in our spirit. And we really need to do something about it. And so the Canucks asked me, what can we do that's more meaningful? Because every year they would do the Chinese New Year game. But, what could they do that was an extra step? So I had a really heartfelt conversation with them. And we came up with the idea of creating a whole campaign around the jersey for this year, the year of the Tiger. And I wanted to use the jersey as a springboard to the message of change. So that's why, first and foremost, the thing you'll notice on the jersey is the orca has been transformed into a tiger. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that really grabbed a lot of the fan base's attention, is that I managed to keep the entire integrity of the Canucks logo, but transform the animal to something completely different. And it symbolizes the tiger leaping out of water, charging forward, and leading meaningful, significant change to try to say, let's turn the tide against the last couple of years of these anti-Asian activities and really lead positive change moving forward. And how do we do that? I felt like it was about bringing everyone together first and foremost, anyone who's ever visited British Columbia and Vancouver has either heard of or stepped foot in Chinatown or has enjoyed Chinatown. And if you've ever been to a Canucks game, chances are you've gone through Chinatown or maybe you've stopped there before or after. And so Chinatown and the Chinese community has always been an integral part of British Columbia. And it's been an integral part of the Vancouver Canucks community. And so I thought that by bringing all of these elements together into the jersey, we could get people to rally around it. And then once they fell in love with the jersey, they would dive deeper into the story behind it. And so, for example, I took the Chinatown, the Millennium Gateway, and I put it on the shoulder patches. And I actually took the Canucks Chinese name, Jia Ren Dui, and I put it inside of the gateway. Now, that's a detail that if you first look at the jersey, you're going to notice the gateway and you'll be like, oh, that looks familiar. And then you'll probably say, oh, yeah, that was in Chinatown. And then you'll be like, well, what are those three characters inside the gate? And it's kind of like peeling back the layers, layer by layer. And the more you peel back, the more exciting it is, the more interesting it is. And then you find out that the four characters I put at the top of the gateway are printed on the actual physical sign. And it says, remember the past, but look forward to the future. And I just felt like all of these things, it's kind of like when those, the angels are singing like, like, all these things just kind of align perfectly. And so I remember the first time I ever presented over Zoom to the Canucks, my jersey concept with the tiger and the shoulder patches and things like that. And I think everyone was really impressed and really excited by all the layers of meaning and all the sort of thoughtfulness I had put into this design. And that's why I think I'm sure in your research, found tons of articles and countless sort of write-ups that went way beyond your typical, oh, that's a really cool jersey, and I feel like that's what I'm most proud of, is the fact that it made such an impact on the community, the Chinese community, but also the non-Chinese community, which is the entire point of the exercise, is to bring both of them together. And to the point where Premier John Horgan, organized the special online roundtable, invited myself, the president of Canuck Sports and Entertainment, Jim Rutherford, and all these important members of the Chinese community all together to discuss it. And I feel like that was the moment where I felt like, wow, I'm really, really, really proud of, what I've done on a sort of community level, beyond just being an individual designer.
You have the privilege to inspire young readers from Canada to China. You've had this experience. What is just your thought process and feelings when you're connecting with readers of different cultures on basically opposite sides of the globe?
One of the things I feel really lucky about is when I was a teenager touring in British Columbia, I got to tour everywhere from Burnaby to Richmond to Squamish. And I realized one thing: it doesn't matter where the kids were from. Whatever their background was socially or economically, they all want to laugh. They all love dinosaurs. I found out a very young age. And because I was a pretty good artist, anytime I remember going to a high school once, and it was, I think it was in Mission. And I remember that it was a tough crowd, high school crowd, it's tough. And I remember as soon as I started drawing a Tyrannosaurus Rex, everyone in the room went silent. All these teenagers that were kind of like, who's this guy? Who's this guy? And all of a sudden I was drawing the T-Rex and it was like, whoa, that's really cool, And I got everyone on my side, right? And I realized that there are so many universal things that can draw people together. Art is really powerful. Stories are really powerful. And I just realized, I think at an early age, that I had the ability to create these types of things, to draw people together and break down all the barriers that you can imagine, whether it's language barriers or, ethnic barriers and things like that. So I think realizing that allows me to literally, I've toured around the world. I've spoken to audiences, obviously in English, Mandarin, Cantonese. And at the end of the day, they all respond to the same things. They respond to the moments of inspiration where I tell them about my journey and how I've been able to create Up Studios and Boomy and Piggy, all these characters they now know and love by watching on TV. But they realize that I started, I never went to art school. I started from probably the same background as them in the sense that drawing on sketchbooks or notepads or on your living room wall, that's literally how I started. And I'm able to tell them step by step by step, what I was able to, do to build the characters that you see. So I think, to answer your question, whenever I travel around the world, I try to keep it very simple and focus on the universal things that I think will appeal to every audience. And then from that platform, then I can tailor messages to whether I'm speaking to adults. Sometimes I'm talking to business people. I've spoken at conferences with hundreds of very successful executives and business people, and then I talk about things that are universal to them. I can tailor a message, but kids are the best because kids will laugh at your jokes, and and they'll respond to any sort of cool drawing that you do, and I feel like that's probably what is the most common that I found around the world.
When you're meeting with these kids, going to high schools and having these conversations, what is one piece of advice that you give them if they're creative and wanting to pursue a career in creativity?
Focus on one thing that can make you unique. So I think that part of using your culture and your voice and your experiences is something that can make your story unique. So rather than trying to retell a story that you've seen told by someone else already, and maybe it's a mainstream comic book character that you've already seen 1,000 times, why not create a character that's closer to your background? And I think it's been really cool over the last couple of years. We've started to see the Shang-Chi's of the world, which was probably not possible 15 years ago, right? And I think that's really, and also just recently, Turning Red, the new Pixar film that came out. That's another story. Again, the director's from Toronto, I believe. And so that was a story really specific to her upbringing, as an Asian in Toronto growing up. And so I think you look at the successful creators, they found that voice and they found that unique story. And then I think what makes them truly successful is adding those universal elements I just talked about that I have found, that are common across all audiences. I think as a filmmaker, when you want to create a film, or as an author, you want to create a book that will appeal to as many people as possible, you do have to find those universal touch points. But the starting point, I think, has to come from your heart, your experience, and your unique voice. So that is something I constantly tell audiences is rather than asking what's popular out there. Because a lot of times kids or young people will say, well, should I study what's popular? Or, should I check out what's trending? And I more often than not just say no. I said don't, because first of all, by the time you see it, it's been in development for sometimes 3 years, 5 years, sometimes it's been developed even longer. So by the time you've seen it and it's popular, and then you start to copy it or try to do something similar to it, by the time you get it out there, people will be on to the next thing. So I always try to encourage them to start from themselves, because then you'll never be out of date. You won't be chasing a trend because you're always going to be relevant and your story is always going to be true. So I think starting from there gives you a center of gravity that is very powerful and allows you to pivot and to move, with meaning from that center of gravity.
Where can people go to find out more about Up Studios as well as your children's books?
The first place they can go is probably Instagram. They can go look at Up Studios World, and we have our own YouTube channel. So if they just look up Up Studios World, or if they type in Super Boomy, Boomi, they'll be able to find all of our content there as well.
Enjoying the content from You Multicultural? Subscribe so you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.